I'm Chris Hewitt and welcome to a brand spanking new series of the global phenomenon that is Gameshock TV. How have you spent the last 3 months, by the way? Really? Yeah, I've spent it here, locked in this room. They won't let me out. They won't let me see my friends and family. Can't get a haircut. Ridiculous. Anyway, here's what's coming up on today's show. Cover your knees as Kingdoms of Amalur takes a shot at Skyrim. Steve gets to grips with a PlayStation Vita. It's a one-way ticket to hell and back as the darkness returns. And we look at what the future holds with the rest of 2012's big releases. With those pesky Mayans predicting the extinction of humanity and the end of the world in December 2012, there's precious little time to waste on trivial things like work, social lives, exercise, or decent links. Thankfully, though, there's plenty of time to waste on trivial things like games, and 2012 is shaping up to be quite a year. March sees the return of interfering alien fetishist Commander Shepard for the third installment of the brilliant Mass Effect series. There are some welcome returns for Twisted Metal and Resident Evil, with Operation Raccoon City ahead of the Sexquel number 6 later in the year. Also enjoying a resurrection is Silent Hill, a series that finally seems to be back to its best, at least from what we could tell behind the sofa anyway. There's plenty of manga-inspired fisticuffs as well, with Street Fighter vs Tekken and the eclectic Asura's Wrath. The World War II set Birds of Steel stands out just for being a flying game, but can only trade off its uniqueness for a couple of weeks before the arrival of Top Gun Hard Lock, the movie tie-in that can be our wingman anytime. Traditionally a time of bunnies and cute baby animals, spring meets its natural bedfellows in Ninja Gaiden 3, Prototype 2 and The Witcher 2. The former promises the first gaming experience of sawing through bone, lovely, while the latter comes with all sorts of bloody rampage and naked nudiness. Ooh, matron. And camping up the gore no end, Lollipop Chainsaw brings a whole new line in Undead Sexy as you play a thinly disguised male fantasy, gratuitously lopping off limbs with a chainsaw. Assuming none of these get the blood pumping from your severed arteries, Rockstar's new addition to the Pain Pantheon arrives in May. It's made its long journey almost entirely in bullet time, but we expect the wait will be more than worth it. Plus, Max has got a beard now, and beards are cool. Continuing the theme in its own way, the Dirt franchise mutates into Showdown, taking away most semblance of racing and ploughing headlong into Destruction Derby territory. Hoping to avoid real-life natural disasters this time, MotorStorm RC tones down the scale of destruction for download and PS Vita, and takes us back to the giddy days of Micro Machines with its radio-controlled models. Fantasy makes a resurgence come summertime with the long-delayed Diablo 3, Darksiders 2, and even a Game of Thrones adaptation vying to keep you from the great outdoors. Also fueling your vitamin D deficiency will be Fable: The Journey, a curious Kinect-enabled first-person magical shooter-style title, which will most likely continue in its 4-burst maxim and deliver roughly half of what it promises. It's another bumpy year for sequels too, as we're bombarded with the gorgeous Far Cry 3, the mysterious Halo 4, Hitman Absolution, Prey 2, and Borderlands 2. Trumping a lot though, Rising promises less of the talky cutscenes and more of the slashy fight stuff. And also, we hope, some cardboard boxes. Please God, let there be cardboard boxes. Similarly shy on the calendar front are Tomb Raider's reboot and The Last Guardian. Lara Croft's return looked great at last year's E3, while The Last Guardian remains PS3's most impressive looking and yet ill-defined game. Expect that next year. Also defying the laws of time will be Naughty Dog's The Last of Us, a post-apocalyptic story-driven zombie fest. But it's so ambitious that there may be some sheepish postponement press conferences coming our way later in the year. November will no doubt be riddled with bullets again, with an expected sequel to Black Ops and an as-yet unannounced shooter from EA. For anyone pining for less bombastic ways to blow people's heads off, Spec Ops: The Line will be offering a morally grey playing experience. What it hopes to achieve in acute emotional involvement may yet be compromised by generic genocidal gameplay, but the early signs are that this one will have us wiping tears of shame from our eyes as we obliterate our pixelated brethren. A slightly more unhinged take on warfare is provided courtesy of Brothers in Arms Furious 4, which keeps the series' WW2 setting but ditches reality for some good old-fashioned Nazi bashing. That one of the 4 protagonists is a chain gun-wielding lumberjack is probably all you need to know. We don't remember a lot of those history lessons. much delayed Aliens Colonial Marines now has a release date towards the end of the year, which is either a sign of confidence or a mark of the game doing its level best to plaster over some gaping cracks. Potential remains high though for a tense co-op gutbuster, but equally high for another game over, man! This is game over! Arguably the biggest games of the year, however, will be Bioshock Infinite and Grand Theft Auto 5. We've been picking apart Rockstar's trailer from the end of last year and can now exclusively reveal that GTA 5 is looking awesome. Aside from the glamorous setting, a thinly disguised LA, there are hints that this could see a shift in morality from previous episodes, and more importantly, that you might be able to fly a Lear jet. A Lear jet. Bioshock Infinite, meanwhile, has captivated everyone who set eyes on it. Away from the dank and dirty water world of the last two games, this one has you flying high, mutating yourself at will, and helping out a mysteriously powerful lady with big boobs and an undersized top. What is it with games developers and mysteriously powerful ladies with big boobs and undersized... Oh, hang on, no, I get it. And last but not least, this year sees the launch of the Wii U, Nintendo's slightly eccentric next-gen console. It's too early to say what its arrival will bring to the scene, apart from a slightly eccentric next-gen console, but it's safe to say that Mario and Zelda will be kicked out of their retirement homes with some lovely HD polish on their cinema frames, just in time for the coming apocalypse on December 21st, around about 9:20, in case you were wondering. This time last year, the Nintendo 3DS launched to a loud fanfare of almost complete indifference. With a sparse launch lineup of startling mediocrity, it's taken the whole year for the 3DS to claw its way back to respectability. Inauspiciously, the PlayStation Vita is celebrating this anniversary by doing, well, much the same thing, only hopefully better. We asked Steve Hill and his hairy palms to get to grips with some handheld fun. What innuendo?
Handheld gaming has come in many shapes and sizes over the years. Of course, Sony had to stick the beak in, probably best part of 10 years ago now with the PSP, whenever that came out. And of course, the reason we're here is to talk about the new cock in the roost, which is the PS Vita, which is lighter than that, would you believe it? So yeah, just for scale, that's the old PSP, that's the new Vita. It just feels incredibly light. It feels like a sort of fake, you know, shop front model, the sort of thing you get in the front of the shop so nobody steals it. Yeah, I can assure you this is the real deal. I'm literally playing Uncharted, well, as much as you can play an Uncharted game. It's basically press X to win. I mean, it's essentially a showcase for the console. You've got this back pad here, which so you can climb up and down ladders, up and down ropes. It feels a little bit like, you know, trying to undo a bra. It's slightly fiddly. The dual sticks is obviously the big deal. There's tilt technology and touchscreen, which, you know, is all a bit 2005, but yeah, it works really well and, you know, it just looks sensational. You're basically playing a console quality game in your hand whilst watching television. As a gaming console, yeah, it's going to live or die on its games, and often, you know, consoles launch a little bit half-cocked, but this is coming out with 26 games at launch, I work out, which, you know, that's a lot of choice. And then there's going to be downloadable stuff to follow, which I believe will be cheaper. Yeah, the big ones: FIFA, Formula 1, Wipeout, Virtua Tennis, Uncharted, probably the top 5. Yeah, very strong opening lineup. Got a few other games have been sent. Obviously, it's illegal to launch a PlayStation of any type without a Wipeout launch game. Wipeout 2048, which I think is technically earlier than some of the others. Yeah, exactly as you expect, console quality Wipeout in the palm of your sweaty hand. Again, everybody's golf. Doesn't really take advantage of any of the features, but plays a perfect good game of golf. This is pretty good. Mod Nation races, the whole, you know, design your own track, sort of poor man's Mario Kart. And then you've got, yeah, a couple of augmented reality things. If you remember, the 3DS had the weird kind of dinosaur fight. You've got this, good fun for half an hour. On a similar note, Little Deviants, very much like the free game that comes with 3DS, where you're kind of shooting things in the air. So yeah, I was chasing things around here, running around the garden, shooting imaginary enemies, which a little bit weird looks from the neighbours. There are similarities to the PSP, which is obviously quite an old console now. There is kind of a feeling that it's just, you know, what the PSP would have been had the technology existed at the time. Yeah, which is fair enough. The PSP is still a great console, I still use it. Battery life, bit of a problem, you know, a couple of 3 hours really if you're playing intense gaming. It has got everything you could pretty much expect from a console, barring 3D. I would sit on a train and watch a film on that. You've got stuff like Skype, obviously social apps, because God forbid someone play a game or listen to a piece of music without telling everybody. So yeah, I can press that and I can find out who's playing what games near me. You can spy on people essentially, which is obviously a crucial part of any piece of technology. But this is bringing genuine console quality gaming, to the palm of your hand. Show me an iPhone that could play Uncharted, I don't think so. Just obviously not as big as a television, but if you put your face close, what's the difference?
If for you the words "the darkness" conjure up images of lanky hair, camp rock and spandex, then it's probably you haven't played the game of the same name from 2007. Renowned for its gleeful immorality and malicious dismemberments, it's about as far away as you can get from squealing East Anglia men in catsuits. Now, with nary a sign of glitter in sight, it's back for a sequel that promises to be even sicker. Let's rock! Several years after we last saw him, emo mobster Jackie Estacado is having a much happier time of things. He's the head of a crime syndicate, he owns a restaurant, lives in a mansion, and hasn't had any girlfriends murdered in front of him for a good while now. Having renounced the darkness and suppressed the inner evil, Rafael Nadal's mafia twin is forced to revisit life with two sadistic tentacles sticking out of him when he's nearly killed by a horde of identikit, orange jumpsuited goons. I hate it when that happens. Conveniently said clones are a pretty accurate vision of the experience to come. Colourful, great fun to kill, but increasingly repetitive, as you and your evil appendages meet the same selection of maimable meat over and over and over and over and over again. Happily, or perhaps not so happily, the single-player campaign never outstays its welcome by virtue of being short enough to complete in a couple of sittings. But those sittings are some of the most enjoyable and addictive buttock restings you'll have for a long while. Utilising standard weaponry, you're also privy to the special talents of your two tendrils, which are able to throw items, swipe at enemies, flick them into the air, and generally mete out gratuitous pandemonium. The very definition of guilty pleasure, you'll find yourself giddily perpetrating acts of unspeakable nastiness, whether it's slicing people's heads off with car doors, or ripping your foe's spine out through his anus. An assecution, as the game will have it. It's this sense of humour that pumps the game along at a joyful lick, emanating in particular from your sidekick, a small demonic monkey in a Spice Girl outfit, armed with a truly horrifying British accent. Like a simian Dick Van Dyke, it chirps up with jolly commentary to your fissurations from a cockneyed "Go, this is some merry mischief," to a nice little line, "and God save the Queen." The jollity is also carried through to a cartoonish visual style which, despite the violence, suits the action well and leavens what could have been a grimy affair. Decent voice acting gilds an intriguing and tightly scripted story, proving a compelling reason to play through its short runtime. The pace dips in the occasional mansion sections, which carry a disproportionate weight of exposition, and what could have been a sprawling mythology becomes bunched up to avoid player burnout. Longer and more varied gameplay would have done wonders in this regard, but there's always a competent co-op and special ops style additions to mix things up once the main story's played out. But, loyal to the game's theme, these are essentially more of the same in slightly different packaging. What's left is a slight but very enjoyable few hours, perfect for killing time, and people in orange jumpsuits. And that is it for part 1, but there's so much more to come in part 2 that I can barely contain myself. Oh, and that reminds me actually, I've got to go to the little presenter's room. See you in a couple of minutes. Oh, what do you mean I can't leave?